Kuroiwa Medaka stands out in the most unexpected way. In a school where popularity rules every hallway and admiration flows toward those who shine the brightest, he stands like a quiet wall, unmoved, unreadable, and completely unaffected by the charms that sway everyone else. It's this strange resistance that catches the attention of Mona Kawaii, the girl everyone sees as the embodiment of beauty, confidence, and irresistible charm. She's used to smiles melting at her feet, but Medaka doesn't even blink. And for the first time, that bothers her more than she can explain. What begins as a normal school day twists into something new when Mona notices him during class, the way he listens quietly, how he avoids the spotlight, and how her presence doesn't cause the slightest ripple in his expression. It's puzzling, almost frustrating, like a puzzle she suddenly needs to solve. When she decides to test him with a casual greeting, expecting the usual flustered reaction, his calm reply feels like air slipping through her fingers. No spark, no blush, no stumble. Just a polite acknowledgement that leaves her oddly off balance. As the day unfolds, Mona keeps catching herself glancing his way. She tells herself it's only curiosity, nothing more, yet every time Medaka ignores the small traps she sets, little gestures, warm smiles, playful comments, her determination spirals into something deeper. It's as if the one boy who should admire her the most is the only one who doesn't, and that contradiction pulls her toward him with growing intensity. By the time school ends, Mona finds herself walking beside him almost without realizing it, trying again to provoke some reaction. But Medaka remains steady, distant yet strangely kind, answering her lightly while keeping a respectful space between them. And in that quiet moment, she feels a shift inside her, as if this boy she barely knew a few hours ago has become an unexpected challenge, one she can't back away from. She watches him step ahead, calm as ever, and it hits her that this might be the first person capable of shaking her perfect facade, and maybe even her heart. And as she takes a slow breath and moves to follow him, something new begins to unfold, something she can't quite name yet, but she's already too intrigued to stop. Medaka begins another day at school with that same calm, detached air that makes him stand out without trying, the kind of presence that feels grounded even when everyone else is swept up in noise and excitement. But Mona, who refuses to accept being ignored by the one boy immune to her charm, is more determined than ever. She watches him from across the classroom, frustration and curiosity mixing in her expression as she tries to understand why he never reacts the way everyone else does. Their strange dynamic becomes the focus of the class when Mona boldly approaches him again, this time with a gentler tone dressed beneath her usual confidence. She offers him a small favor, something simple, almost innocent, but Medaka quietly declines, not out of coldness, but because he genuinely doesn't understand why she keeps trying so hard. That misunderstanding only fuels Mona further. Later in the day, during lunch break, a sudden commotion erupts when a group of boys gathers around Mona, trying to get her attention. Instead of basking in it like she usually would, she keeps glancing toward Medaka, almost hoping he'll intervene. He doesn't, at least not until one of the boys steps a little too close, their voices rising just enough to shift the mood. Medaka moves in with that calm firmness of his, not aggressive, not emotional, just quietly imposing. His presence alone makes the group back off, and Mona can't hide the small blush that follows. For the first time, she sees a different side of him, not just the boy who resists her charm, but someone who acts on principle without hesitation. After school, the two cross paths again under the fading afternoon sun. Mona tries to thank him, but her words stumble, softer than she expects. Medaka listens, nodding in that steady, unreadable way of his, and the distance between them feels just a little smaller, subtle, but there. As she walks away, Mona realizes her feelings aren't just stubbornness anymore. They're turning into something deeper, something she isn't ready to admit out loud. Meanwhile, Medaka watches her go with a thoughtful look that lingers longer than usual, like something unknown is beginning to shift inside him too. Just as the day seems to settle, a message spreads through the school, news of an unexpected event drawing everyone's attention, stirring excitement and uncertainty. And in the middle of it all, Medaka and Mona find themselves pulled into something that promises to push their strange connection into a new and unpredictable direction. Medaka arrives at school with that same quiet presence that makes him feel slightly out of sync with the rest of his classmates, yet somehow more grounded than any of them. Meanwhile, Mona is already focused on him from the moment he walks through the door. After what happened the day before, her curiosity has grown into something sharper, an itch she can't ignore. She's determined to make him react, to draw even the smallest crack in that calm, unshakable expression of his. The opportunity comes sooner than she expects when the teacher announces a paired activity, and, by what feels like fate to her and pure coincidence to him, Mona ends up partnered with Medaka. She tries to keep her composure, but it's obvious she's thrilled, leaning closer than necessary, offering small compliments disguised as casual remarks, and glancing at him as though waiting for magic to happen. Medaka, in his usual steady tone, responds politely but without the warmth she expects, and that contrast only makes her more determined. As they work together, their differences become clearer. Mona's lively energy and Medaka's calm detachment swirl around each other in a strangely balanced way, like two forces that shouldn't fit yet somehow start to align. During lunch break, Mona decides to step things up. She invites Medaka to share her meal, even though she'd never admit she prepared something nicer than usual just in case this chance came up. Medaka hesitates, caught between politeness and his monk-like reserve, but eventually sits with her under a quiet patch of shade outside the classroom. For a moment, the world seems slower, softer. Mona watches him carefully, noticing tiny details she never paid attention to before. The way he holds his chopsticks, how he lowers his gaze when he thinks, the quiet sense of sincerity in everything he does. But just as she starts feeling comfortable, a group of excited students rushes in announcing that a special school event is happening soon, a cultural festival that promises chaos, competition, and more opportunities for unexpected interactions. Mona instantly imagines it as the perfect stage to finally break through Medaka's emotional armor. Medaka, however, seems less thrilled and more uneasy, sensing that the festival will force him into situations he'd rather avoid. Still, as the noise of his classmates grows and Mona's eyes sparkle with anticipation, he realizes he's being pulled into something bigger than just schoolwork or lunch breaks. Something is shifting between them, slowly but undeniably, and the upcoming festival feels like the moment where this strange connection between a stubbornly charming girl and an unshakably calm boy might take a new and unpredictable turn. Medaka starts the day with that same calm, steady presence that makes him stand out even when he's trying his hardest not to. But around him, the school feels more restless than usual. Word has spread about the upcoming cultural festival, and Mona is practically glowing with excitement. She's already imagining the possibilities, the outfits, the performances, and of course, all the chances she'll have to get closer to Medaka. From the moment she spots him at his locker, she rushes over with a bright smile, announcing that their class is preparing for a cafe. Medaka barely has time to respond before she confidently declares he has to help, insisting that his reserved charm would fit perfectly. Medaka, unsure how to refuse without causing a scene, ends up agreeing, and Mona beams as though she's won a prize. As the class begins organizing tasks, Mona sticks to Medaka like a shadow, offering suggestions, teasing him gently, and watching him with an attentive curiosity she doesn't bother hiding anymore. But her energy hits an unexpected wall when a group of popular boys approaches Medaka, questioning why someone from a strict temple school is suddenly involved in such a flashy event. Their comments aren't openly hostile, but there's a competitive edge lurking beneath the surface, and Mona feels it instantly. She steps in, defending Medaka with a confidence that surprises even herself, turning the mood tense for a heartbeat before the boys shrug it off and walk away. Medaka watches her quietly, a faint mix of gratitude and concern flickering behind his calm expression. Later, during practice for the cafe theme, Mona tries to show Medaka how to greet customers with a warm smile, leaning close and demonstrating with exaggerated sweetness. He flinches back slightly, not out of discomfort, but out of sheer confusion about how to handle her overflowing affection. This only makes her more determined, and soon the two of them fall into a strange rhythm, her pushing gently, him resisting softly, the space between them shrinking in ways neither fully acknowledges. But just when the atmosphere seems to lighten, a surprising announcement hits the class. One of the performance groups for the festival has suddenly backed out, and volunteers are needed immediately. The news sends ripples of uncertainty through the room, and Mona's eyes shift toward Medaka with a spark that's half excitement, half mischief. She sees another chance, another way to pull him into the world she wants to share with him, while Medaka senses a new challenge approaching, one he hadn't prepared for. And as their classmates begin to gather, the tension of this unexpected shift hangs in the air, setting the stage for a moment that could change the distance between them in ways neither is ready to name just yet. Medaka moves through the school halls with that same quiet steadiness, trying his best to stay unnoticed, but lately the world around him refuses to let that happen. Ever since Mona set her sights on him, the delicate balance he once relied on has been shifting, pulling him into situations he never planned for. And now, with the cultural festival preparations in full swing, the classmates who barely acknowledged him before begin to drift closer, curious about the boy who keeps turning down the school's most admired girl. Mona doesn't hide her irritation, nor her fascination. She keeps a close eye on him, watching how he reacts, how he tries to blend into the background even as more people begin to notice him. As the festival work continues, Mona suddenly decides that Medaka needs a proper break and drags him outside to the courtyard. She claims it's to clear their heads, but the truth slips through in her smile. She wants another moment alone with him. She talks freely as always, her energy bright and effortlessly charming, yet Medaka listens with a soft attentiveness that catches her off guard. For a moment, even she quiets, noticing the way the sunlight settles around them, making the space between them feel smaller than usual. But before she can push things further, the school's idol group approaches, asking Mona to help with their performance preparation. Mona says yes, of course she does, but she keeps glancing back at Medaka, noticing something unusual in his eyes. He doesn't say a word, but the shift is small, subtle, enough to make her heart skip. While she practices with the idol group, Medaka ends up helping his own class with decorations. He works quietly, efficiently, and that quiet competence surprises the students who never paid attention to him before. Some even try striking up conversations, but it's clear Medaka is still figuring out how to handle this sudden attention. When Mona finishes rehearsal and rushes back, she finds Medaka surrounded, other girls asking him questions, boys trying to drag him into planning, everyone suddenly treating him like someone worth noticing. And something inside her twists. She calls out his name a little too loudly, cutting through the noise, pulling all eyes back to her. Medaka turns, calm as ever, but she can't hide the tension in her voice as she asks him to walk with her. They leave the bustling room together, but the air feels different now, charged with something neither fully understands. Mona walks a step ahead, trying to compose herself, while Medaka quietly studies her back, sensing a storm forming beneath her usual brightness. And just as she opens her mouth to finally confront what she's feeling, a familiar figure appears at the end of the hall, someone unexpected. Someone watching them both with an expression that freezes Mona mid-step and sends a new ripple through the story that's just beginning to unfold. Medaka keeps trying to slip through life quietly, holding onto the peace that comes from being unnoticed, but the world around him refuses to let things stay the way they were. Ever since Mona set her bright, stubborn gaze on him, his days have been getting louder, messier, and far more complicated than he ever asked for. And now, as winter settles in and the class prepares for the long break ahead, their dynamic takes another unexpected turn. It begins when Mona storms into the classroom one morning, cheeks flushed from the cold and irritation written all over her face. She's bothered, clearly, and the reason is simple. Medaka hasn't been giving her even a sliver of his attention lately. She confronts him in her usual dramatic fashion, leaning in close, demanding to know why he's been ignoring her. Medaka, calm as ever, just blinks and tells her he hasn't ignored anything. But that quiet answer only fuels Mona more. She follows him around the room, trying to pull out some sort of emotional reaction, anything that proves he's noticing her effort. Later that day, the two end up paired for a shopping run to stock supplies for a class project. Mona immediately sees it as a perfect chance to spend time alone with him, while Medaka simply carries the bags and walks at his steady pace. The trip through town is filled with Mona's chatter, her teasing remarks, and her not-so-subtle attempts to get Medaka to compliment her winter outfit. But the real shift happens when the two take shelter from the cold inside a small cafe. Mona presses her hands to the warm cup, glancing at Medaka from across the table. Her voice softens in a way she rarely allows, asking if he truly dislikes her. And Medaka, honest, simple, and terribly disarming, tells her he doesn't dislike her at all. It's not dramatic, not romantic, just straightforward truth. But it sends Mona completely off balance. She looks away, hiding the spark in her eyes, quietly savoring a moment she didn't expect to mean so much. On the walk back, Mona sticks closer to him than usual, brushing against his arm, pretending it's the cold pushing her closer when the truth sits warm beneath her smile. But just as that calm settles between them, they're intercepted by someone unexpected, another girl who calls out to Medaka with familiarity, breaking the fragile moment. Mona freezes for a heartbeat, her expression shifting as jealousy flickers beneath her usual confidence, and Medaka turns slightly, caught between the two. The newcomer steps closer, greeting him as if she's been waiting, and in that instant the quiet winter evening ripples with a new tension, opening the door to a chapter neither of them is prepared for. Medaka has always tried to keep his distance from the chaos of high school, convinced that staying unnoticed is the safest way to survive each day. But ever since Mona began chasing after his attention with that fiery mix of pride and vulnerability, his quiet world has been shifting piece by piece. And now, with the school festival approaching, the delicate balance between them tilts again. The day begins with Mona marching straight up to Medaka, frustrated that he's still not reacting to her charm the way everyone else does. She insists on helping with festival preparations just so she can stay near him, brushing off anyone who questions her motives. Medaka, calm and expressionless as always, simply works beside her, picking up decorations, running errands, doing whatever needs to be done while Mona tries to spark even the tiniest emotional response from him. As the class gets busier, Mona catches Medaka watching her for a moment longer than usual, and that single glance sends her into a fluster she tries desperately to hide. She slips into a softer tone, asking if he's excited for the festival, secretly hoping for a real conversation. Medaka gives a simple answer, but there's warmth behind it, subtle, almost imperceptible, yet more than what she usually gets. Later in the afternoon, the two end up alone in the hallway hanging decorations. Mona steps closer, playfully accusing him of avoiding her earlier. But the teasing fades when she opens up just a bit, hinting that being ignored by him hurts more than she expects. Medaka, noticing the genuine emotion in her voice, reassures her with a quiet honesty that catches her off guard. For the first time in a while, Mona finds herself speechless, not because she's embarrassed, but because she can't decipher this new tenderness from him. Their moment is interrupted when rumors start spreading around the class about Medaka and another girl, the same newcomer who had approached him before. The whispers reach Mona immediately. Her smile falters, her excitement dims, and she walks off in a hurry, pretending she doesn't care. But it's written all over her face. Medaka watches her go, confused by the shift in her mood, unsure of what he's done wrong. And just as he follows after her, hoping to clear things up, he turns a corner and finds someone standing there, waiting for him with a look that promises the calm of the day is about to break in half. Medaka has never been good at handling attention, especially when it comes from someone as intense and unpredictable as Mona. After the strange tension left hanging from the previous day, he tries to slip back into his quiet routine, convinced it's better not to stir anything up. But Mona doesn't let things slide that easily. She storms into class with her usual confidence, yet there's a subtle stiffness in her smile, a trace of jealousy she refuses to admit. When she spots Medaka calmly chatting with another girl again, that tiny crack in her composure widens. She approaches them with a bright, exaggerated friendliness that fools absolutely no one, least of all Medaka, who senses something off but can't quite put it into words. The girl leaves, sensing the atmosphere, and suddenly it's just the two of them, standing in a silence that Mona fills with a forced laugh and a playful jab about him being popular lately. Medaka quietly tells her she misunderstood, and that brief moment of honesty softens her expression more than she expects. Later, the class prepares for another school event, and Mona ends up working side by side with Medaka once again. The mood between them slowly warms as Mona starts acting more like herself, teasing him, hovering too close, pretending she's unaffected by his calm presence while clearly, deeply affected. Medaka, in his quiet way, pays attention. He lifts heavy boxes before she can, adjusts decorations she struggles with, and every small gesture chips away at her frustration. At one point, she loses her balance on a ladder, and Medaka instinctively catches her. Time freezes for a second as she stares at him, cheeks burning, her voice barely above a whisper when she asks why he always acts like he doesn't care yet still helps her without hesitation. Medaka looks away, murmuring that he just didn't want her to get hurt. It's simple, genuine, and exactly the kind of answer that leaves Mona's heart spinning. But the peaceful moment doesn't last long. A group of students bursts in with news about an upcoming competition that will involve several schools, including one where someone from Mona's past, someone she's been trying to forget, will be participating. The moment she hears the name, her smile fades in an instant, replaced by a look Medaka has never seen from her before. And just as he steps toward her, trying to understand what's wrong, Mona turns away, her shoulders trembling slightly, as if the past she's kept hidden has finally caught up to her. Medaka has always preferred simplicity, but lately his days have been anything but simple, especially with Mona's emotions shifting like the wind around him. After the tension stirred by the mention of her past acquaintance, the atmosphere feels heavier than usual. Medaka notices immediately, Mona still smiles, still jokes, still acts like the center of attention, but something in her eyes stays distant, almost guarded. Even the rest of the class senses it, tiptoeing around her unusual quiet moments as if they might accidentally break something fragile. Medaka, who rarely pushes himself into anyone's personal space, finds his attention drawn to her again and again. He watches her laugh too loudly at things she normally wouldn't, stay distracted during group work, and force her cheerfulness like she's trying to outrun a shadow only she can see. Eventually, he approaches her during a short break, not with dramatic words, but with the quiet sincerity that sets him apart. He simply asks if she's okay. Mona freezes, caught off guard, then dismisses it with a wave of her hand, yet her voice betrays her. Medaka doesn't press, but his calm presence lingers, and for a moment she seems grateful for it. Later that day, the class prepares for a joint training session with another school, and Mona works harder than usual, almost as if she's trying to avoid thinking altogether. When the students from the other school arrive, the name that had shaken her earlier becomes a face, someone who approaches her with a familiarity that makes Mona stiffen instantly. The boy greets her with casual confidence, acting as though nothing ever happened between them, but Mona's forced smile falters the longer he talks. Medaka, watching from a distance, notices every subtle tension in her posture. When the boy steps closer, Medaka instinctively inserts himself between them, not aggressively, but firmly enough that the air shifts. His quiet stare says more than any words could, and the boy eventually backs off with a smirk, muttering something under his breath as he walks away. Mona exhales shakily, trying to pretend she's fine, but Medaka can feel that her heart is still racing. As training begins, Mona throws herself into the exercises with reckless focus, pushing harder than she should. Medaka keeps an eye on her, stepping in whenever her movements slip or she forces herself too far. The more she tries to hide her feelings, the more obvious they become to him. And just when she thinks she's regained control, the boy from her past calls out to her across the field, stirring the emotions she's been trying to bury. Mona's expression changes in an instant, eyes narrowing, shoulders rising, as if bracing for a storm she never wanted to face. Medaka takes a step toward her, knowing something important is about to unfold, but unsure if he should intervene, and that single moment of hesitation marks the beginning of a confrontation neither of them can avoid. Medaka has never cared much for drama, yet somehow his quiet life keeps getting pulled into Mona's orbit, especially after the tension stirred by her past resurfaced during training. As the school day begins, the atmosphere around them still feels heavy, but Mona does her best to act like nothing is wrong. She chats with her friends, flashes her usual dazzling smiles, and keeps up the image of the untouchable school idol, but Medaka notices the strain beneath it all. She steals quick glances at him, as if checking whether he's still thinking about yesterday, and every time their eyes meet she looks away a little too fast. Medaka, in his calm and grounded way, simply stays by her side more than usual, quietly attentive without making her uncomfortable. And little by little, Mona's shoulders relax. Later, the class prepares for a joint practice once again, and tensions spark when the boy from Mona's past, confident, smug, and far too familiar, decides to approach her with an air of entitlement. He speaks as if their history gives him rights he no longer has, brushing off Mona's discomfort with a smile that pretends nothing ever changed. Medaka watches from just a few steps away, observing the way Mona's forced politeness starts to crack. When the boy steps closer, Medaka moves naturally into the space between them, not with aggression, but with a quiet firmness that can't be ignored. His presence sends an unspoken message, and Mona takes a small step back, finally able to breathe. The tension follows them into the training field. Mona tries to shake it off by pushing herself harder, her movements sharper and quicker than usual, almost as if she's running from her own thoughts. Medaka keeps a constant eye on her, steady and patient, stepping in to correct her form or catch her balance before she can injure herself. Their classmates start to notice the subtle connection between them, the way Mona listens to Medaka even when she refuses guidance from everyone else, and the way he reads her mood with a single glance. As practice continues, the boy calls out to Mona again, this time in front of everyone. His tone is casual, but his words carry a weight that makes Mona freeze mid-step. The field goes quiet for a heartbeat. Medaka turns toward her, sensing the moment something shifts inside her: frustration, fear, maybe even anger she's been holding back for far too long. Mona's expression hardens, her usual brightness dimming into something sharper, more vulnerable. Medaka takes a step toward her, steady and ready to close the distance, just as the boy begins walking her way once more, his confidence almost daring her to react. And in that charged instant, the air tightens around them, the calm before a storm neither Mona nor Medaka can avoid any longer. Medaka has always lived with a calm distance from the world, a boy whose quiet resolve and self-imposed discipline keep him steady even in the middle of a school overflowing with loud personalities and unpredictable emotions. And yet, despite all his efforts to stay centered, Mona's presence has slowly begun to creep into the corners of his life, pulling him into moments he never intended to experience. As the festival preparations continue, the school feels more alive than ever, colorful decorations, laughter echoing down the hallways, and students rushing everywhere with a mix of panic and excitement. Medaka, trying to help as quietly as possible, ends up working alongside Mona more often than he expects, and every small interaction seems to chip away at the distance he tries so hard to maintain. Mona notices it too. Even if he still avoids her charm, there's a softness in his reactions now, a tiny shift she can't ignore. When she teases him during a break, expecting the usual calm rejection, she catches the faintest flicker in his expression, so quick she almost doubts she saw it, but enough to make her heart skip. And that tiny crack pushes her to try again, this time with a little more honesty and a little less bravado. The two of them end up sharing a quiet moment outside, where the wind carries the distant noise of students practicing for the event. Mona asks him, almost casually, what he really thinks of her, and instead of brushing her off, Medaka hesitates. It's small, subtle, but it's the first sign that her feelings might not be bouncing off an unbreakable wall after all. Before she can ask anything else, they're interrupted, students calling for help, supplies missing, confusion spreading through the festival committee. Medaka steps forward immediately, taking charge with his usual calm efficiency, while Mona follows behind, watching him with a mix of admiration and growing affection. As they rush to fix the latest problem threatening the festival, something shifts between them, something unspoken yet unmistakably real. The day moves faster than either of them expects, and as evening approaches, the glow of lanterns starts to paint the school in soft colors. Mona stands a little closer than before. Medaka doesn't step away, and for a moment the world around them feels strangely gentle. But just as the atmosphere settles into something warm and promising, a sudden commotion erupts near the main stage, voices rising, footsteps pounding, and a new problem that threatens to unravel all the work they've done. Medaka turns toward the chaos, his expression sharpening, and Mona steps with him without hesitation, already sensing that whatever happens next will change everything between them. Medaka has always lived by one simple rule: stay focused, stay disciplined, and never let distractions pull him away from his path. But lately, that rule has been slipping through his fingers ever since Mona, the school's radiant idol, decided to pour all her stubborn charm into breaking through his unshakable indifference. And now, on the morning of the festival's final day, Medaka finds himself walking beside her once again, both of them pretending their hearts aren't a little louder than usual. The school grounds buzz with excitement. Booths are still bustling, decorations sway in the breeze, and everywhere they go, the whisper of Mona's popularity trails behind them. But today, she's unusually gentle. There's less teasing in her voice, less insistence in her smile, as though she's finally allowing herself to slow down and simply exist beside him. Medaka, with his calm presence, matches her pace without thinking. Every step they share feels natural, easy, yet filled with a quiet tension neither knows how to name. Their peaceful moment is interrupted when classmates rush over, pulling Mona into the last event of the festival, a mock confession stage, where students jokingly express their love for fun. Mona is pushed forward before she can protest, and the crowd immediately erupts with cheers. Of course, the most popular girl should take the spotlight. She tries to laugh it off, but her eyes flick toward Medaka, searching for something, reassurance, maybe. Medaka stands at the edge of the stage, arms crossed, watching carefully. Mona's smile wavers, just a little. One boy steps up first, confessing dramatically, like a performer hungry for attention. The crowd laughs, but Mona politely declines with her usual charm. Another tries, then another, each more theatrical than the last. But something shifts when a familiar face appears, the same boy who's been lingering around Mona, convinced he has some special claim over her. His tone is confident, too confident, as if expecting her to blush and say yes in front of everyone. Instead, Mona freezes. The crowd quiets. Medaka's eyes lock onto her, sharp and unreadable. For a heartbeat, Mona looks trapped between her image and her own feelings. And then, with uncharacteristic vulnerability, she turns her gaze toward Medaka, not to the boy in front of her, not to the cheering crowd, but straight to him. The boy notices and steps closer, pushing his confession harder. The tension snaps. Medaka moves forward without hesitation, cutting through the crowd with a calm, steady expression that somehow carries more weight than anger ever could. The boy stops talking. Mona exhales, her shoulders finally dropping. Medaka doesn't say a word. He simply stands there, close enough that Mona doesn't feel alone anymore. And in that quiet exchange, her softening posture, his unwavering stance, the entire audience senses something shift. Just when the air begins to settle, a teacher announces the festival's final competition, a paired challenge, randomly assigned, starting immediately. Mona steps down from the stage, still shaken, and Medaka instinctively stays beside her. Names are called, pairs are formed, and then the teacher pulls the last two cards from the box. A hush falls over the crowd as the announcement echoes across the courtyard. And that's the end of the summary of this wonderful anime. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button, as it helps and motivates me to keep creating more content for you. See you soon.